Welcome to Sports Geek Q&A. Here's your host, Sean Callanan.
Yes, I am Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and this is Sports Geek Q&A, where you ask the questions and I give the answers. Remember, you can get in touch in a variety of ways. Twitter, at Sean Callanan. Facebook, Sean Callanan Speaks. Instagram, at Sean Callanan. At Sean Callanan on the Sports Geek Nation Slack. And also, you can use email, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, or you can send it to any of the Sports Geek social media platforms. Just tag it. Just send me a message, tag it, Ask Sports Geek. Send me a message, send me a telegram, send me a fax. Do it in skywriting. Any way you can. Send me a question on whatever topic you would like me to discuss, whether that's sports business, technology, marketing, digital, stadiums, whatever you like. And don't forget, you can support our podcasting and newsletter efforts via Patreon, going to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. Let's get into it. Question 1 today comes from Daniel, who's actually asking me about what I'm actually holding right now. What is your setup for podcasting? So 250 odd episodes in, I started off with a Blue Yeti, which is a USB microphone that held me in good stead for probably about 50 to 80 episodes, I think. But the best bit of kit that I've got that I'm currently recording this episode on is the Zoom H6. It's a real trusty piece of kit. It is quite mobile. It's able for me to take on the road and record podcasts when I actually do take it on the road and actually do record them, as opposed to when I take it all the way to America and don't record a podcast. The great thing is it does have 4 output microphone outputs, so I can have multiple people on and get different tracks. Like I said, quite portable. It is a little bit battered. It's now got a hairband around to keep the battery door in place, thanks to the TSA staff who decided to dismantle it at Dallas Airport once. But it is still on. It is still keeping on. I really highly recommend the Zoom H6 if you want to do anything in audio. Obviously, you can use it connected with a video camera and the like. So the Zoom H6 is great for a podcast recording. I'm recording on a Shure SV200 microphone. I'm not an audio guy. I do audio, so I don't really know which is a good mic, so don't take recommendations from me. When I'm testing out mics, I always do an audio sample and then send it to my guy, James, who's part of my setup for podcasting. James Eade, my podcast editor over in London, does a terrific job making these sound terrific and removing any problems that may exist in the background or low levels and those kind of things. I send those podcasts to him via Dropbox. They get sent back. We use Auphonic as a means to clean it up top and tail, put the cover art on it, put the metadata that Apple requires, like titles and all of those kind of things. Auphonic's quite good. I use that early on to like level things out, but I don't need to do that with James. But it's a nice little tool to, if you wanted to, I guess, homegrown your own podcast, you can put a top and tail on and cover art and those kind of things and create it in the format you want. So you want an MP3 in the end with the appropriate compression so it's not too big. So use Auphonic, and Auphonic then sends it to Libsyn. So Libsyn is and has been my podcast host for 6 years now. So the reason you host your podcast with a specific podcast host like Libsyn is that you don't want the drain of the resources of multiple people from Apple or Android podcast devices pulling down those MP3 files. And if those MP3 files are slow, it does affect your ratings in the podcast stores of the world. So that's my podcast. That's my setup for the podcast, Daniel. I hope you appreciate that. Question 2. So this one came from LinkedIn, from Jimmy Serrano, who's actually a former MLB pitcher. He was a pitcher with the Marlins. He threw this one out here. Having played professional sports at the highest level and now involved in the technology side of it, I'm curious how technology, will tap into the emotion of the athlete esports player in real time. I think that people are naturally curious about the emotion in pressure situations. It's one of the first questions the media asks. How does it feel? What were you thinking? What was going through your mind? Great question, Jimmy. And it is a constant question of the sideline reporter. I actually do think I think the tech is developing. We're seeing brain tracking and tech that like Muse and headbands for meditation and those kind of things. So we're starting to see that tech that's doing something in that space. So like whether it's measuring brainwaves or activity and those kind of things and stress levels and that kind of stuff. So I don't think we're that far away from a wearable that might be able to be doing those kind of things. But then the second piece of the equation is something that currently broadcasters and sports high performance sports tech guys are currently struggling with, or and something I actually spoke with Bo West over at Catapult about is who has rights to that data, and is that data is there a problem sharing that data with the public in a broadcast as an example, or even just outside the team environment because it has competitive advantage. So I think that's probably where it's more an ethical dilemma around that. But is there something that we can record and share in the same way that Heartbeat is shared for F1 drivers and those kind of things? And we've seen the Telstra tracker here in Australia report how heartbeat of players as they're about to line up for goal. So, is there a metric or a made up term that sort of can measure stress or something like that? I think there is potentially for that, where we see something that says it should be a stressful situation, but Steph Curry's at the line and his heart rate and all of those things are actually low, and so it's sort of effectively been able to define someone that is ice cold and in their when a big situation's there. So it is interesting. I think there's no doubt that I think we'll be able to track it. I think it'll be tracked first by coaching staff and high performance staff, and then I think it'll be the broadcasters' fan engagement piece where people will start to go, well, what do we do it in real time? I think we're seeing real time mechanical stuff. So we're seeing stuff in esports of how fast people are clicking the keys and again, heart rate and reaction time and those kind of things. I think we'll continue to see those kind of things in the mechanical space. Recently, there's a cricket bat technology that's just going to be introduced this summer with a sticker that's on the bat that's going to effectively report on the bat speed and the timing of the batsman hitting the ball, those kind of things. So whether we can come up with something in that space, that'll be the question. And I think then the other part is, I guess, the ethical, moral issues of what do these devices, what will they show? Will they show someone with high anxiety or having a panic attack and those kind of things? And how much does that creep into, patient-doctor privilege and the rights of players? So, yeah, there's my answer. I'll flick you this episode back on LinkedIn, Jimmy. Appreciate your question, and I'd love your take on my answer. Thank you very much. Question 3. This one comes from a recent news article from Natalie. She asked, what do you think of the 49ers season ticket plan that's going to include food items? I really like this idea. I think the guys at or the people at Levi Stadium, Al Guido, who's been on the podcast before, would have run the numbers. Levi's always trying to innovate in what they can do for their fans. They had a lot of in-seat ordering early on with the app, but they didn't see a lot of take-up on it. So it always takes a little bit more. And then I think the other part is the cost of going to a game does add up. You buy your season ticket and that is, not an insignificant amount of money. But then if you are going and you are buying food and hot dogs and those kind of things, it can add up. So I'm sure Al Guido and his team have run the numbers to make sure that it's still going to be profitable. But also it's really important that the fans feel like they're having a great experience and it's a really big benefit to them. So I think it's another method of engaging fans that's not technology. And we've seen other sports venues like in Atlanta where they've effectively desperately discounted the concessions as a fan engagement strategy. So I think this is just an extension of that and rolling it up into the value piece of being a season ticket holder. So I think there'll be a few more teams following suit. But I think what you have to do is actually run the numbers, and it's you have to make sure that it makes fiscal sense rather than just saying, yes, this will do it, this will keep renewals. Because it wasn't really about renewals. They said they had good renewals. It was about providing more value to their fans. So that's it for this episode of Sports Geek Q&A. Thanks again for your questions. Thanks to Natalie, Jimmy, and Daniel. Again, send them in any way you want and any method you want and any platform you want, whether it's on social or email. Please send them in. I'd also love your support on Patreon. Simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon to pledge your monthly support for as little as $4. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
You can reach Sean Callanan via email at sean@sportsgeekhq.com. Find out more about Sports Geek's Digital to Dollars process at digitaltodollars.com.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.